What's up, guys? It's your boy Wimpy back with another podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about keeping it real, all right? The opposite of being fake. Because most people nowadays are just fake, all right? They pretend to be good, but really they're not all that good, you know? Got poor people wearing Gucci and Versailles when they can barely pay rent, all right? You got your preachers, which is what this podcast mainly is going to be about. Preachers presenting themselves as righteous when inwardly they're wicked. All right, politicians, I mean, that's a self-given. If honesty was introduced to our politics, the whole thing would collapse. It wouldn't know what to do. All right, our whole political system rests on lies. All right, it's a house of cards. That quote comes from George Carlin. Not the part I said about if honesty was introduced to politics, the whole thing would fall apart. But like everybody can see this in their lives, all right? That you're bound to have some fake friend, all right, around you, all right, or fake family members. They'll smile in your face and then plot against you behind your back, talk crap about you behind your back. These people are everywhere. Our society has almost no honor left. Everybody's a liar. It's hard to find an honest man anymore. And honor all rests upon honesty, okay? I like to keep my bullshit up front, all right? I'm a drunk driver. I'm alcoholic and all this bad stuff, right? I'll keep it up front. I ain't gonna hide none of this stuff. Went to jail 4 times, okay? Done all kinds of stupid stuff. I'm not pretending to be some righteous, holy saint, okay? I'm keeping my bullshit up front. But most people like to hide it. They like to hide all their stuff, sweep it under the rug, and present this person to the world that isn't actually them. They like to put on a mask and pretend to be something they're not. Okay, this I cannot stand, especially in our religious figures or preachers or politicians, people who are in a position of power in society. They're supposed to be honorable. They're supposed to tell the truth. Instead, they lie. They hide behind false virtue and all this other sorts of stuff. So there's 2 quotes I want to pull up here, all right, from the very honorable young Dolph in his song 100 Shots. He said, "They don't want you to live. Huh. They don't want you to ball. Huh. Them pussies smile in your face. Yeah. Then they pray for you to fall." Lyrical genius. And then Meek Mill, all right. This quote probably would fit better in the last podcast, but he says, "Money don't make you real. Don't give a fuck if it's 80 mil. Pussy." All right. That's from Lord Knows, Meek Mill, Tory Lanez. All right. Lyrical geniuses. So, of course, I got another slideshow for you guys. Hopefully you can keep along. It's going to be long. And I'm going to start it off with a painting. All right, this painting is the religious procession in Kursk province, painted by Ilya Repin. And it was completed in 1883, but he began painting it in 1880. It takes a long time to paint really good masterpieces like this. But I'm no artistic major, so I got Claude to summarize the meaning of this painting for you guys. And Claude says, "The dust rises like incense beneath the boots of the powerful as they parade their holiness down a barren road, gold vestments gleaming, chins lifted, icons held high like trophies. But look closer. At the edges, pushed aside like an afterthought of God, a broken hunchback strains forward, his twisted body the most honest prayer in the entire scene." That's this little poor kid right here. He's trying to get towards the holy icon they're carrying, hopefully to be healed, all right? That's a common theme, especially in a lot of Dostoevsky's work. It's the faith of the poor people, all right, or the broken. They're broken, right, and they're just looking for a miracle. While the rest, you got this priest in the middle who's careless, all right, very arrogant and prideful in his nice robe, just combing back his hair, and then you got this aristocratic woman who's holding this icon here, and you got your proud police officers, and then this guy's beating some peasants. This guy's holding back this poor hunchback kid from trying to get to the idol to be healed, right? So there's this division here, all right? Social injustice, if you will. Anyways, all right. The wealthy woman clutches the sacred icon with the grip of ownership, not devotion. This one I pointed out right here in the middle. All right. A priest smooths his hair. This one, careless, carefree. A man stumbles drunk. All right. I don't know where they see this. I believe it's this guy right here behind the icon. And all around them, the poor watch with hollow eyes and desperate faith, kept at a distance from the very miracle they need most. Repin didn't paint a procession. He painted a verdict, a damning, dusty, heartbreaking verdict on a society that learned to wear religion like a costume, while the truly faithful were left to limp behind in the heat. And that's basically the meaning of this. All right, it's a division. All right, the people that hold power in society, the aristocrats, the priests, the police, the institutions, they wear their righteousness like a costume. They aren't truly righteous, all right? They just pretend to be, and they're careless. While the people that truly need miracles, right, they're left to limp behind. While the wealthy, the priests, they hold all the icons and hold all the wealth of knowledge to themselves. So that's that. It's a lot deeper than that, this painting. All right. It took 3 years to paint. I mean, Repin, he saw this and he painted it. I guess it was a profound experience for him, so he painted. I guess what he saw, it might be a little different than actual events, but this is it. All right. Now, I'm going to pull up Dostoevsky. All right, this is from his book, The Idiot. I read it when I was in rehab. Very good book. All right, probably, I'd say it's close to my favorite of his. It comes close with the Brothers Karamazov. But I had Claude write this super sweet little summary too. But Chris Mishkin himself is the living embodiment of Matthew 6, which we'll discuss here in a second. Summed up, it just means, or what Jesus teaches is not to perform your righteousness in order to be seen. So Prince Mishkin, he's the main character of The Idiot, known as The Idiot. He's a man of genuine, unperformed goodness who is destroyed by a society that cannot recognize authentic virtue because it has only ever seen the costume kind. He never announces his compassion. He never performs his mercy. And the world around him, trained to reward spectacles, sees only a fool. All right. This was true back then. Dostoevsky lived in the 1800s, but it's always been true, okay? Especially now. Like, if you don't go to college and get a college degree, you're looked at as a moron, right? And I've met most of the people that graduated from college, they are about retarded, all right? It's all about certificates. It's all about looks, all right? It doesn't really matter what the person actually holds, like what their talents are. It's all about the appearance, okay? And, you know, Gucci and Versailles and all that stuff, that's basically what its whole brand is like looking wealthy, all right? Looking supreme, if you will, when really these people are just empty, okay? But here is the quote, or a passage from The Idiot. All right, part 4, chapter 6. In this scene, the idiot Prince Mishkin, he's like welcomed into the Yapachins, if I'm pronouncing that right, their household, in a gathering where it's a bunch of like high society people. Well, not high society, but higher society, aristocrats, right? And this is basically how Dostoevsky explains this scene through Prince Mishkin, or, well, Third person view of Prince Michigan. The charm of refined manners, simplicity, and apparent sincerity was almost magical. It could not even have entered his thoughts that all this sincerity and nobility, wit and lofty personal dignity were perhaps merely a splendid artistic manufacture. All right, fake. Most of the guests, in spite of their imposing external appearance, were even rather empty people, but unaware in their self-satisfaction that many of their good aspects were simply a manufacture, for which they were, moreover, not to blame, for they had attained it unconsciously and by inheritance. So this kind of sums up most of the book. It's a very long book. I believe like 600, 700 pages long. So there's all sorts of different things that Dostoevsky explores in this. But basically, Prince Michigan is his Christ-like character who isn't worried about appearances or appearing to be good. He's just genuinely a good person who's not like out to get things for himself. He genuinely cares about people. And then to those around him, this comes off as idiocracy, right? Because in a society like of wicked people who just lie to get what they want, this person, this person's goodness, authentic goodness, looks like idiocracy to him. All right, because good-hearted people, they're not worried about getting more money for themselves or looking good and all this other stuff, trying to get higher in the social hierarchy, right? When for them, that's all life is about, getting more money, getting more wealth, all right, getting more fame, of just appearing to be righteous, right? That's all that matters to them. And they'll do whatever, all right? They lie to him. They try to take advantage of him. And him being simple-hearted, he falls for it a lot of the times, all right? But he's not a stupid guy. He just seems to be stupid. So that's that. Now we're going to dive into Scripture. All right, I'm going to start this off with Matthew 7:21 through 23. All right, Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Go away from me, you who behave lawlessly.'" All right, so in today's society, especially in Western Christianity, this is very relevant because that's all they teach in churches is to say, "Lord, Lord." Just accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, and that's it. You get free ride into heaven. It's a wide gate. It's really easy. All right. It's an easy deal. Okay. But that's not at all what Jesus is saying. You have to do the will of his Father. All right. You have to follow the law. He said, "You who behave lawlessly," in the back here. But that's what modern Christianity teaches for the most part, is you don't really have to follow the law. You don't really have to try to be a genuine good Christian. You just have to say, "Lord, Lord," and you're in heaven. That's it. Okay. And we'll get into why that's going to make these people twofold childs of hell. All right. In a later verse. But this is it. Okay. Woe to you guys. All right. You got to actually read the Bible and put an effort into doing God's will. All right. It's not a simple one and done thing and then you're in. All right. It requires a lot of effort. All right. A lot of sacrifice. Okay. So Jesus, a lot of people say that Jesus didn't drink, he was perfect, blah, blah, blah. But I want to bring up these verses for you to just shine a light on things, okay? Because a lot of preachers now, they don't drink, they perform their righteousness in public, they dress nicely, they don't want to hang out with the sinners, all right? They just want to look good, okay? But Jesus did the opposite, all right? So for here, it says, "For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon." John the Baptist. Okay, so whenever a person, like the religious authorities, like when somebody comes around and teaches something different, all right, or points out that they are wrong, it's a character assassination. They'll be like, "Oh, he has a demon," all right? Or, "Oh, this person's a drunkard," all right? Don't listen to this guy. He's a piece of crap, okay? He cusses, he drinks. He drinks and drive. Don't listen to him. All right. Listen to us. We don't drink. We don't hang out with sinners. We're so great. All right. That's why you should listen to us. But Jesus taught the opposite. All right. And then continued, the Son of Man, Jesus is referring to himself here, came eating and drinking. And they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. All right. So he's saying that he came eating and drinking. All right. You could use theological gymnastics to say, oh, he's just eating bread and drinking grape juice. All right. But he clarifies it here by saying drunkard. All right. And Pharisees would perform their righteousness by not eating, all right, fasting all the time. But, so that if you don't fast all the time, you're considered a glutton. Okay. This also appears in Luke, all right, chapter 7, 33 through 35. He says, for John the Baptist has come eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Nevertheless, wisdom is vindicated by her children. All right, so main message here is, although Jesus might look like a sinner, he hangs out with sinners, tax collectors, he drinks, he eats, he doesn't perform his righteousness to be seen. All right, he's not wearing fancy clothes. He doesn't have a college degree. He's not a great religious authority. He's not the emperor of Rome and all this. Wisdom will be vindicated by her children. All right, God doesn't see, all right, what men see. He weighs people by their hearts, or judges men by their hearts, which we'll get into here in a second. But Isaiah 65:5 echoes this, who say, keep to yourself and do not come near me, for I'm too holy for you. These are a smoke in my nostrils, a fire that burns all day long. All right. Modern day preachers, Pharisees, this thing's been going on for a while. All right. So what I was just saying about God not looking at outward appearance, this is a verse. All right. When he gets Samuel to anoint David. So 1 Samuel 16:7, Samuel goes to the house of Jesse to anoint the next king, and Jesse shows him a bunch of his sons who are like big and bad. So Samuel thinks, oh, this must be the guy. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on his height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. All right. So that kind of sums it all up. Everybody judges a book by its cover now. All right. You have to have a college degree. All right. You have to have all these credentials. All right. If you don't have all that, you're basically a moron peasant. Okay. You have to look good. You have to look good outwardly, but that's not how God sees things. He looks at the heart of a man. That's why he chose David. He was the youngest of his brothers. He wasn't the most physically impressive, all right, but he had a heart after the Lord. That's why he was picked. Now, let's go directly into what Jesus is saying about practicing your righteousness, all right? So Matthew 6, the whole chapter, you can go and read through it yourself. It basically just sums all this up in a bunch of different aspects. But it starts out with, beware of practicing your righteousness before others in order to be seen by them, for then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. All right, so many wealthy businessmen, they'll give a bunch of money to charity to look good. They go to church on Sundays to look good, but inwardly they're just doing that to appear good. All right. They want to look good to the community. They don't really care about the people they're giving alms to. All right. Matthew 6:5-8. And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who is in secret will reward you. All right, they don't teach this in church because, your preachers like to get on their knees and pray in front of the whole congregation to be seen as holy. All right, it's all performance. They come in with their nice suits, their nice shoes, nice everything, because they're holy. All right, they just want to appear to be holy. They get on their knees and pray in front of everybody to be seen as holy. All right, we just have a new generation of Pharisees. They don't teach you this in church. All right, 7. When you are praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard because of their many words. And do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. All right, and then directly after this is the Lord's Prayer. Keeps it very simple. All right, now I advise people to look to these verses, all right, because a lot of the things that goes on in church is tradition. All right, a lot of it is not founded in biblical verses. All right, Martin Luther said sola scriptura. Well, a lot of stuff we have now is just dogma and tradition handed down to us by ignorant men. All right, so continued, Matthew 6:16-18. And whenever you fast, do not look somber like the hypocrites, for they mark their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their rewards. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting may be seen not by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. It just echoes the same thing, all right? They're just doing it in public to be seen, all right? This is embodied by a character in the Brothers Karamazov, Father Zosima's rival, and I forgot his name, but this basically sums him up. He fasts all the time. He's like casting out demons all the time, and he's a very prideful and arrogant man. But Zosima, he doesn't do all that extra stuff. He's very simple-hearted. He's a simple-hearted man. But as soon as Father Zosima dies, the other guy, he takes this advantage to crap on his name and spread all sorts of different stuff. It embodies this, basically, is this guy who's just performing so that others will look highly of him. All right. Matthew 23, 1-12. It's a long one. Then Jesus said to crowds and to his disciples. All right, Matthew 23, it's directed strictly at the Pharisees here, all right, which are modern day Pharisees or preachers. Then Jesus said to crowds and to his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it, but do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. All right, so right here, this doesn't really particularly pertain to modern day preachers, I don't think, because they ain't even putting heavy burdens on the people themselves. They preach a prosperity gospel, of a wide gate gospel. All you have to do is say, Lord, Lord. All you have to do is profess Jesus as your Savior, and that's it. You're done. You're a sinner. You're a sinner. There's no way that you can't sin, okay? So don't even try. This takes the burden off themselves and off the people they teach, which is very bad, okay? Because God calls us to follow his commandments, to do what he says, all right? And now they're saying you don't have to do what he says. So that's why I don't think this particular part doesn't pertain to modern day preachers, but following it does. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fingers long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogues, and to be greeted with respect in marketplaces, and to have people call them rabbi. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers and sisters. And call no one your father on earth, for you have one Father, the one in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant, and all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. That last verse summarizes it all up. All right. All who humble themselves will be exalted. All who exalt themselves will be humbled. All right. Those who were first will be last. Those who were last will be first. Those with ears to hear, let them hear. Luke 11:43-44. It echoes this, it's basically that, but in Luke. Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love to have the seat of honor in the synagogues, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplace. Woe to you, for you are like unmarked graves on which people unknowingly walk. All right. Matthew 23:13-15. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you lock people out of the kingdom of heaven, for you do not go in yourselves, and when others are going in, you stop them. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross the sea and land to make a single convert, and you make a new convert twice as much a child of hell as yourself. This is exactly what this would summarize what modern day preachers look like, all in one little go here. All right. So, like I've been saying, they lock people out of the kingdom of heaven because they tell them you don't have to follow the law. You don't have to try to be good. You're a sinner. You're a piece of crap. There's no point. All right. So, in that process of teaching people not to be good, ultimately, they convert this child. They make the new convert twice as much a child of hell as themselves. All right. So they don't follow the law. They commit adultery. They cheat on their wives. They take the money from the tithes and, do all sorts of immoral stuff with it. And they teach their converts that they don't have to do anything either. Okay. It's a prosperity gospel. And in the process, they make the world a worse place. And if you notice here, it's 13 and 15. All right. The verse 14 is not found in the earliest manuscripts. You can find it in the King James Version, which is outdated. But it says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like some preacher around here actually... this woman gave him a house, and I do believe she is a widow, and that house was supposed to be used as an orphanage or something, and the guy sold it or something of that nature. That is just rumors. I have no verification there, just something I heard, but I don't know. That just made me think of that when I read that. It could all be false, though. All right. So, but this verse here, although it's not in Matthew, it is found in Luke in the earliest manuscripts right here, or in Mark. Yep. As he taught, he said, beware of the scribes who will like to walk around in long robes and to be greeted with respect in the marketplace. We don't have long robes now. We have, nice fancy suits. And to have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for the sake of appearance say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. Woe to you, preachers! Your days are numbered, unless you repent and change your ways. Matthew 23:23-26. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! That's the common theme here. They're hypocrites. For you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. All right, very relevant with today's preachers. They want their tithe. They want your money. All right, so they can go and buy a private jet with it, or buy a new house with an elevator in it. They want your tithe, but they neglect justice and mercy and faith. Okay. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You have blind guides. You strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. All right. Like I said before, they have a system to where so many times out of a month or out of a year, they have to preach about giving alms, okay, so the church can get more money. All right, there's a system here. So they're focusing on you giving them money instead of focusing on justice and mercy and faith. All right, 25. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and of the plate, so that the outside also may be clean. All right, modern day preachers. All right, we just have a new generation of Pharisees. Echoed in Luke, basically same thing. Now you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, and inside are full of greed and wickedness. Greed, very key here, because they want your money. You fools, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? So give as alms those things that are within, and then everything will be clean for you. All right. But woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and herbs of all kinds, and neglect justice and the love of God. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. All right, same thing as before. Matthew 23, 27 through 28. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside look beautiful, but inside are full of bones, of the dead and of all kinds of uncleanness. So you also on the outside look righteous to others, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Modern day preachers. All right, Matthew 23, 29 through 36. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteousness. All right, so I'm going to preface this. I believe this also shows up in Luke or Mark. We'll find out when I pull up the next slide. But I'd say this to a lot of people, but modern day Christians, if Jesus came back, the same Christians that worship him now would crucify him again. All right, because the things that Jesus is actually saying, the stuff that I'm telling you, they don't want to hear that. All right, we have a new generation of Pharisees, right? They just want to make money off of you. They've made an organized religion, all right, which is the opposite of what Jesus wanted. So when Jesus comes back, and it won't be the way that they expect to be raptured out because they feel entitled to go through life without any suffering, very entitled children. All right, they want to go back to daddy while the rest of us suffer. All right. See, the Jews, they didn't accept Jesus as a Messiah because he didn't come as they expected. All right, the Messiah is supposed to do certain things, and that's why I also believe that Jesus isn't the Messiah. I mean, of course, he could come back and fulfill those prophecies, the prophecies of no more war, of the no more love of gold, the prophecy of everybody on earth worshiping the one true God. Those prophecies, yes, he could fulfill them when he comes back the second time, or he wasn't the Messiah. I do believe that he was a Messiah. There are prophecies that strictly are very, very closely resemble Jesus. A lot of prophecies are taken out of context to portray Jesus. Like, example, the virgin birth narrative. That's a Greek idea that they pulled from Greek mythology, and they use the verse Emmanuel, all right, a son will be born to us, Emmanuel, everlasting and wonderful God. They also use that to justify the Trinity, but if you read it in context, you'll learn that, well, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says, before the child grows up to know the difference between good and evil and eat the curds and the honey, the two kings that you hate will be destroyed. The two kings that they hate are going to be the king of Assyria, I believe, or Syria, and the king of Israel, who came together to come against Judah in that time. They were laying siege to Jerusalem and Judah. Those were the two kings that they hated. And this child that was born during that time, all right, which they believe is Isaiah's son, that they named Emmanuel, before that son grows up, all right, those two kings are going to be laid to ruin by God. All right, which was the prophecy for the time period. But they take that out of context to push the virgin birth narrative. Long rant here. I get it. But the whole point that I'm getting to is the Jews expected the Messiah to come a certain way. When Jesus came, he didn't come the way that they expected him to come, so they crucified him. Well, now the Christians expect the Messiah to come a certain way, but the Messiah ain't going to come the way that the Christians expect them to. They expect to be shot up into heaven, and then everything's going to be hunky-dory. They believe that there's going to be an antichrist that's, committing or doing all these miracles and, becomes a great leader and all this. But their antichrist sounds like the Messiah, right? So you got to think, if Jesus came back, he doesn't come back the way that they expect him. Let's say he does come back of another virgin birth. Whenever he grows up and he starts performing miracles and stuff and he becomes a big voice, the Christians are going to be like, oh, this is the Antichrist. He's performing miracles. He's casting out demons. He's very charismatic. Okay, this must be the Antichrist because our Jesus is supposed to come out of the clouds and we're supposed to be shot up into heaven with him. And then that's the trap. Okay, that's a trap of ignorance. You give a moron a Bible, he's going to screw things up. You give a retard a calculator, he's going to try to turn the TV on with it. So now we got a bunch of morons with Bibles. Fatal misstep in evolution. But Anyways, all right. The Christian Antichrist sounds a lot like the Messiah. So there's this interesting thing going on here. Who's deceived? And they say that he'll be casting out demons and stuff. That's their argument against the Muslims and stuff, because Muslims cast out demons and stuff too. I think it's all psychological, placebo effect, nocebo. But they'll use that to say, "Oh, this is the Antichrist casting out demons to show that he's this great leader. He's trying to deceive us." But Jesus himself said that a house divided cannot stand. Satan cannot cast out Satan. Okay. So it's the stupidity of the whole thing. All right. They can't really think. It's like something's wrong with their brains. Unfortunately, we have to deal with it. All right, Matthew 23:29-36. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. All right, basically what I'm saying. Thus you testify against yourself that you are descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your ancestors. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how can you escape the judgment of hell? For this reason I send you prophets, sages, and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town, so that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I tell you, all this will come upon this generation. All right, he says this generation, but this has happened over like centuries. William Tyndale, excellent example. He tried to translate the Bible into English, and for that he was burnt at the stake for heresy, right? So whenever somebody comes around who disagrees with the church, trying to translate the Bible into English so the normal person could read it instead of having to go to a preacher for them to interpret it for them, or priest, they are heavily persecuted, killed, all right? And then the people that killed him say, oh, if we were around in the time of Jesus, we would have stood with him. But no, they would have been the Pharisees. All right. It's just the same trap. All right. The history repeats itself from those who don't learn. Obviously, these people haven't learned. And it's also funny because, like, a lot of people say, if I was around in the times of Hitler, I would have saved the Jews. No, they probably would have been in on it too. There's plenty of psychological studies. The Ash's conformity experiment, the shock experiment. I forgot who did that one, where somebody in a lab coat told this person to shock this person, and they did it because the person told them to do it. All right, but that's beside the point. Let's continue. Luke 11, 45-52. This echoes that, but Luke, it says the lawyers, the experts of the law. All right. Not actual like lawyers as we think of them, but like Jewish lawyers who studied the law of Moses. All right. So when Jesus was saying all these things, it insulted them. All right. Which I'm probably insulting a lot of preachers right now. But he said, woe also to you experts in the law, for you load people with burdens hard to hear, and you yourselves do not lift a finger to ease them. Woe to you, for you build the tombs of the prophets whom your ancestors killed, so you are witnesses and approve of the deeds of your ancestors, for they killed them and you build their tombs. For this reason, the wisdom of God said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and persecute, so that this generation may be charged with the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundation of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who perished between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, it will be charged against this generation. Woe to you, experts in the law, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You did not enter yourselves, and you hindered those who were entering. All right, so basically reiterating what Matthew's saying, changed it a little bit. There's a few things that's changed here. So, yeah, basically just reiterating things. Well, dang out. To the last slide. Yeah, that must be the last slide. Well, I blew through that pretty quick. Wasn't expecting that. But that sums it all up. All right. Hopefully I've offended plenty of people here. uh, are plenty of false preachers, prosperity gospel people. And I might be getting a lot of backlash for this, but who cares? All right. So to reiterate everything I'm saying is we got a lot of fake people here. A lot of fake people. All right. They pretend to be good, but inwardly they are wicked. All right. Mainly preachers, politicians, police, all sorts of things. And I'm not saying that all of these people are bad. Of course, there's good preachers out there. Of course, there's preachers who are actually teaching something good, okay, who are actually changing people for the better, okay? But for the most part, most preachers don't really change people, okay? People go into church, a piece of crap, and they leave church a piece of crap, all right? Because the preachers aren't telling them the truth, all right? Politicians, they pretend to be righteous and they're going to do all this stuff, but it's all lies, okay? They're just in there to make a buck. All right, policemen, all right, crooked. Some of them, not all of them. All right, like I said, not all of them. There's good cops out there, but it's hard for a person not to be corrupted by power. They did a whole study on this Stanford prison experiment. All right, how power corrupts people. So ultimately, it's not really their fault. All right, weak people can be corrupted by power. All right, but we just want to make some RNs. All right, a lot of RNs. We got to take these fake people and turn them into RNs. People that tell the truth. All right, even if it leads to their death. All right, and not pretending to be something they're not. Okay, because this is bad. When you start lying to other people, you're gonna lie to yourself, and you're gonna live in this la land. All right, of not being in reality, and this can be detrimental. All right. So that's that. And with that, I yield.